Hey y'all, it's your girl Chelsea, and welcome back to Civics for the Culture. Thank you so much for sticking around with us. I feel like we're really hitting our rhythm. Well, with that being said, I have two really important topics I want us to discuss. The first one is redistricting. The second one is gerrymandering. And I know when you hear that, you're like, what? Well, girl, same. But I have a really phenomenal person that's gonna walk through this with us. They're gonna help me explain what gerrymandering and redistricting means, what the difference is between them, and why it even matters.
Hey Chelsea, thanks so much for having me on. I'm ready to lay down some knowledge. So, redistricting is basically a general umbrella term, and gerrymandering is a more specific way of redistricting. Redistricting is essentially every 10 years where states redraw their legislative and congressional district maps. Basically, maps that divide your state up into areas that your elected officials represent in Congress and in state legislatures.
And on top of that, state government entities are required to draw these maps based on population changes determined by the U.S. Census, which just happened last year. That's why we kept telling y'all about the census. I swear all of this shit matters. They have to redraw the districts because it's required by the Constitution and federal courts. And it's a good thing, but only if it's done fair. People move, populations grow, and representation changes with it. And when it's done in an honest way, our elected officials in districts that they represent accurately reflect our country and its diversity. Because we deserve representation. Alright, so hit us with what gerrymandering is.
So, gerrymandering is when redistricting starts to get real shady. Remember, redistricting generally only happens once every 10 years, and it can determine which party wins elections in a district. So politicians can be very interested in drawing maps in ways that benefit them. In some areas, politicians draw their own districts, and obviously that makes zero sense. Gerrymandering is when partisan state officials, or whoever redraws district lines, make them look super weird. These are artificial boundaries to create weird-shaped districts that don't make sense in any other way than to help themselves or their political party. Oftentimes, they deliberately give some of us less power. It's used to ensure the party doing the redistricting keeps winning elections.
I know what y'all are thinking. How is this shit even legal? Well, it ain't. Racial gerrymandering is illegal. But in 2019, a case made its way all the way up to the Supreme Court that tackled the issue of partisan gerrymandering. And unfortunately, the Supreme Court ruled that federal courts can't stop partisan gerrymandering. The problem is, the people redrawing the lines use partisan gerrymandering in ways that take power away from voters of color.
The funny thing is, they don't think we're watching, but we are.
And we can do something about it. The Freedom to Vote Act would ban partisan gerrymandering in congressional districts, and the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act would allow the federal government to stop partisan gerrymandering that unlawfully discriminates against communities of color. You remember we were talking about this last week? This shit matters.
So, now we gotta call our senators. We have a once-in-a-decade chance to protect voters from this partisan gerrymandering bullcrap and make sure all of our voices are heard. The foundation of our democracy rests on the idea that each person's voice is given equal weight and that voters choose their leaders, not the other way around. So, call your senators today and ask them to pass both the Freedom to Vote Act and the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act. Redistricting is already underway, so we need to call our senators ASAP and ask them to pass these laws before state redistricting maps are formally approved. Call 833-465-7142 and then visit stopjimpro2.com.
Thank you so much, friend. You made my job hella easy today. We got more heat and facts for y'all next time. Once again, thank you so much for rocking with me and Civics for the Culture.